Is that better?
Yes, now I can hear. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. In our permissible uses section that definitely describes that there's a difference between mini storage and warehousing as allowed land uses between the sub area and non-sub area. So that is already covered. It's just sort of the question, do we want redundancy in there? Pros and cons, it highlights it, but it also down the road can lead to errors in code as the code changes. Then just really your feedback again on lot sizes. That's one of the metrics that we had discussed previously. At least staff has kind of discussed this after talking with you, talking with the council, and if we're putting these other prescriptive standards in place, the question is, does it make sense to then apply this lot size standard that could be a benefit? It could also be a negative, again, if we're trying to balance these use rights and property rights. So anyway, hand it over to Planning Manager Levitan if you had additional comments, but I just wanted to sort of give you that feedback and sort of set the stage with the different conversations.
No, I think that's great. Great presentation by Joe and good comments from Russ. I think, you know, the three site configurations, as Russ mentioned, definitely provides the flexibility and some options for property owners. There's definitely that economic incentive to provide that kind of vertical mixed use with more active uses on the ground floor that typically have a higher employment density, create kind of more active area, not just kind of these storage facilities that don't generate a whole lot of employment or really kind of retail or commercial activity. So we wanted to, you know, as Russ mentioned, balance those rights, but provide some incentives to provide a greater mix of uses with additional employment density. So yeah, we're really just looking for initial feedback. I think we would like to, you know, we'd like to get some feedback from the city council as well, just before we get to the public hearing stage, just so we can maybe avoid kind of some of the wholesale changes that have happened with some of the other code amendments, just getting their early feedback and letting them know what the planning commission, giving them an update on what your feedback is tonight before we move on to public hearings.
All right, commissioners, I guess we'll open up the floor and we'll, anybody got any questions or comments or suggestions? Commissioner Burke?
I was curious, is there a kind of a source where this language came from? Is it kind of a success story in another jurisdiction where they found that it did help, you know, improve the usage of the land and the viability of the space?
Yeah, so in drafting some of the language I use, I kind of started with Linwood and Shoreline and a couple other places, a couple other local examples where they were basically kind of had similar areas. I mean, where they're trying to activate areas of Highway 99 and areas within their commercial districts, within their town centers, while still allowing these types of uses, but providing kind of those economic incentives to provide a greater variety of uses. So that was where some of the language came from. We did amend some of it because we maybe don't have quite the size of parcels, or we don't have the exact same characteristics of these large swaths of commercial land along Highway 99. So had to kind of, we tweaked it a little bit. But that's where some of it came from, was from a couple of those jurisdictions.
So we're kind of in line with some best practice.
Yeah, and we looked at a couple other places, in Oregon as well, and just kind of looked around for kind of similar kind of inner ring or kind of outer ring suburbs, just kind of what they were doing and how they were trying to balance. A lot of places have similar issues where they've had kind of explosive residential growth, but haven't had kind of the employment growth to match that. So ways to balance it while also, there was some concern from the city council that, if we get too restrictive on these, that there still is a market demand for it. And so we want to provide opportunities for the market to respond while also still acknowledging that we have other needs besides just that market demand.
I appreciate the research and especially coming up with some options on how to, maximize the viability of the space. That's a little bit thinking beyond kind of where we initially started. So I appreciate that. Just in response to that first question, should there be kind of a sub-note at the bottom? I think you can make it clear. I'm always in favor of, so that's not kind of buried somewhere else in the code. So that's up front. And I do this, yes, you can, or no, you can. Thank you. That's my help.
The other commissioners? Commissioner Oxford?
Jill, if I may have you go back to the map, please. Yeah, we should. Thank you. So again, we don't have a whole lot more area that this type of business could go into, in theory. And while I appreciate council's want that this be satisfied, there's a lot of other things that move up the food chain, in my opinion, that would be more advantageous to invest in. And also, and I say this every time we talk about this topic, if you look, every corner, every entrance to our city is now dotted with this. Some of them more attractive than others, I get it, but still, it is the entrance to Lake Stevens now is landmarked by some sort of self-storage. And so I like the idea of the 3 different options. I think that that's smart. I like the idea of having a footnote there, but not duplicating it. And I would not encourage, not that you could discourage private, industry, but I would not encourage this unless it was a specific request that got creative on a specific piece of property, much like what we had to deal with on that 204 property a couple of years ago. That property is problematic. This makes sense there. What they built is potentially the only thing they could have built there at the end. But some of the other things that have been built or are pending worry me, because I think that there could be other uses for that, but that's not my choice to make. So those are my opinions. This would just not be an industry that I would go after and seek. I think that Marysville and Snohomish can do it all they want, and people who live in our area can utilize those businesses.
And I would just note on the site configurations where we added that in, with some other jurisdictions of that, including Linwood and kind of some of their commercial core, they only allowed it as kind of a vertical mixed use type, where you basically, that's your only option in specific zones. I think they're between like Alderwood, so between like 33rd and 44th along 196, that kind of commercial core of Linwood, you only have one option. You have to introduce a vertical mixed use component. So that's something that could potentially be done.
But they have so much longer
Yeah,
stretch, it's just not the same topography.
So if somebody wanted to put a storage unit in a local business zone area, we have one of those three choices. You can't just make it that we have to have retail or something on the bottom and then storage on top. And that way you kind of get more of a multi-use for that property.
So you can do that. I mean, we presented it where they have the option to have storage only. There's an economic disincentive and that you don't get to utilize the whole site.
Okay.
You know, and it's even with horizontal mixed use, you're able to, depending on how your site is laid out, kind of, and there's a requirement for horizontal mixed use. If they have, say, a non-storage facility, it has to be in the front so that the storage facility isn't like right on the street.
Right,
Front is like dominating.
got it.
And you have something else that creates a more active kind of retail commercial environments. And so, you know, we wanted to get the initial feedback on these three options. They're, you know, it's the planning commission could recommend and how we want to require whether it's horizontal or vertical mixed use, that there be some other component on any site that has a storage facility. Or is that economic disincentive to do a standalone one just because, you know, especially if we net out all of the associated infrastructure and the roads and critical areas and all of that, it quickly shrinks down the site. Percent of that. So but there's different ways to do it. If you think that there should be standalone facilities allowed, that's something that we can explore.
Well, I don't mind the standalone facility if it's like in the industrial kind of area, but if it's going to be in the local business area, then I think it would be wiser to have like a multiple use. We have a and storage up on the top, or retail on the front, storage in the back, and then that way you get a little bit more use, better use, match the area. Like I said, if it's in, you know, in the industrial area, then that's totally fine. You have to be a standalone, you know, a standalone storage facility, but if it's going to be in a business, then I think it's better that it would be a multi-use kind of thing. So you can have storage and retail and storage and office space or something.
Yeah, that's something that would be easy to amend the code. I mean, the draft code is that only two of the options are allowed, that you have to have some sort of mixed use component if you're in local business or commercial district versus if you're in LI or GI, that you can have that standalone facility. There still is an economic incentive for somebody to say, but like manufacturing on the road, ground floor, and then storage facilities above it, that they would be able to utilize more of the site. They would be subject to that 50% coverage standard. So there's still and that would help the city achieve, you know, some employment growth above and beyond.
And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say in our permissible use table that this use in local business zone is restricted to highway-oriented sites only.
That was in 1444-044. Originally, that was taken out, but we can't.
That has been taken out.
In this draft language, we had moved that just to simplify it, but that's something that we can do. I mean, most of the local business is along. You know, the ones that we have are along 2, they're along 2 and 4. You know, they're small pocket. So that provision sort of covered all of them.
Commissioner Cronin, do you have any comments or questions? No, we don't want to leave you out if you want to.
No, I appreciate it. Yes. No, sorry. Well, first, sorry for not being there. I know it's a lot easier to run when I'm there, but I missed some of the presentation. So if I'm being redundant or anything, I apologize. No, I thought it was, everything looks good from my side as far as, you know, I agree with the city council, you know, that it's important to, in providing some development flexibility while, you know, achieving the city's goals and future outlook. I think, you know, the city did a good job of doing that with the 3 site configurations. You know, I think there's enough incentive there to make, you know, the developments feasible and, you know, potentially those areas come to fruition. So I'm in support of the code. You know, I don't disagree with some of the stuff that Commissioner Huxford said, but as far as what we're talking about, I agree. And then as far as the specific questions that they had, you know, I agree with Commissioner Dewar on, I'm usually against redundancy and stuff like that in the code. But in this case, I think, rather than having them flip a few pages down to find that table, there's no hurt in just adding, the part that they're not permitted in any of the adopted sub areas. And then as far as the rest of the restrictions with the maximum floor area and the minimum lot size, I went back and forth kind of on this. I think the use coverage is sufficient. And, to me, it looks like, in the gentleman's email, I think he was talking about 6 properties. So I don't know, I don't know how much more that would restrict it. I think the stuff that's been done is enough to, kind of guide it in the right direction where I would vote to not include the floor area or the minimum lot size, just because I don't know how much of a difference that would actually make. And, and I think just generally I support a little less regulation if it's a 50-50. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much. I guess I'll say I agree with the commissioners. I think this is a really good ordinance. I like the way things are going, along with the comments. I'm neither here nor there whether or not we add the extra language or not. I can go either way on it to me. And I agree with the we don't need to add to the maximum floor. What we had that percentage group, in my opinion. Since our land is so, what buildable land we have left, and it does qualify. We do need obviously some creative thinking on certain things that we built. So I don't want to put too many restrictions on people because we know we have challenging areas to build on. So I think if we do get too restrictive, we're gonna have some problems there. So first, I think it's a really good code, and but we're going to be moving forward with this. So you said the next stage is you're going to take it back to the council and then hopefully come back to us for a public hearing.
Yeah, it sounds like you're pretty comfortable with it. We'd like to just do a briefing with the council before we move on to public hearings. And yeah, we appreciate the feedback tonight. The council is on their break through the 23rd. We'll try to get on the agenda relatively soon after that. Kind of from there.
David, if I may,
Yeah.
here's a great road permitting process. Is this at all impacting that decision, or is that?
It is, and then they would be vested to their current code. It doesn't really have an impact on them. They're in their review. We kind of submitted a review letter back to them. They've resubmitted and they're working through some issues with that site.
And then so get back to the city council sometime after the 23rd, and then we'll price this. We're going to guess maybe price September. Yes.
Yeah, I think we could get it back pretty soon. Just I don't think there's, unless we hear all changes, different opinions from the city council. Get this back pretty soon.
Great. That'd be great to get this over and get it off our plate. Thank you so much. It's good work. Thank you, Joe. This is a good job here, because I did the same thing. I reviewed several cities, and it's aligned with a lot of the same things. Even some of the details that were written in there that I started looking at with the lighting, with the fencing and stuff like that, and keeping with the feel of the neighborhood that you're located in, which I thought was really good. So
Yeah, back in the 2017 code amendment, definitely took some language from Linwood.
yeah.
As I was reviewing it, really familiar. So, all right.
Is there any other questions or comments before we move forward? All right, then we'll move forward to our next item, which will be commissioners' reports. And I will move forward. I will ask Commissioner Cronin first, a remote reporter on the field there.
No report, just I just want to reiterate, I thought the city did a good job with this code. It's creative. I think it's a good give and take, with giving property rights and kind of going along the line of, their goals and stuff. So I thought it was an interesting read, and I think it's a creative job.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Huxford,
Nothing to report tonight.
thank you. Commissioner Dewar,
No report tonight.
Commissioner Holt,
No report.
and the chair has no report. Plain Rick.
Okay, thank you, Commission. Just give you a quick update on Aquafest. So the city held its booth, and we had an opportunity to talk to about community. That was really good. We're able to talk a little bit about our housing action plan, a lot about our Sunset Park, a little bit about the transportation benefit district. So I think it was successful for the new format. We'll see how it goes in continuing years. And beyond that, I'm open for any questions if the commission has any questions for me tonight.
Is the public aware that they're gonna be voting on the transportation fees? Did that come up in conversation?
The city has shared the message as much as we can. At this point, all we can do is provide facts. So we've created a fact sheet and there's a committee moving forward. We've submitted it for ballots. So the city kind of steps back right now, except for just pure factual information.
I just wondered whether or not that would hit people's consciousness. Oh, good.
I'm still looking for the people for the pros and cons for the voter pamphlet, Dr.
Last I heard, the committees were not filled.
So we're still looking for, there was 3 pro, 3 con, I believe. Oh, someone on your left right now. All right. Another question? All right.
Oh, just, you're having a meeting on the 17th, right? On the 17th?
Yeah. Yeah, where the plan was to focus on comprehensive plan on the capital facilities and public services.
So we'll have a meeting then.
Correct.
All right. Our next meeting will be August 17th. Still back at this location, I believe, because still a few more weeks left of farmer's market. Right.
For those not in the room, it is lovely to see you. You're in a very chill 68 degrees. Everything's fine.
All right.
My HVAC went out and I got stood up on the appointments. That's why I'm not there. So it's sweltering here.
Oh, see, you should have been here. This is the week you need it.
All right. With nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi,
We are adjourned. Thank you all so much.
thank you.
30.